why should Christians care about refugees on a personal level? Or another way of putting this question is, what should a Christian's posture be towards immigrants or refugees in their communities?
I mean, sure. I would say, two things, especially here in North America. We need to understand everybody is immigrants or descendants of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
All of us or our ancestors have come from somewhere else, including Native Americans. And for us to understand that we are the guardians or original owners of the inhabitants of any particular region is foolish. If you only can trace back a few decades or maybe a few generations for some, all of us have come from somewhere else. So that understanding is very core. We are not home anywhere. We will not be, our citizenship is not going to define us. Our ultimate home is far beyond places of our domicile or passports and citizenships of, that we hold. What does it mean for us to understand that we belong elsewhere and yet able to relate to people, everybody who comes along this journey of life? And, so we are not here forever, and our descendants will move somewhere else. And our forefathers have moved through history. And to understand that, I think I find the meaning in the story of God in the Bible. The Israelites, when they took possession in the land, when God gave them a place to live and call their own, and a land that flowing with milk and honey. And as God, as the scripture tells. But the idea that, God, they were reminded that we always be mindful of foreigners and the aliens among you. And the rationale for that is you yourself were once aliens in a foreign land. And he was referring to Egypt. And you went to a foreign land. They gave the best of the land. You flourished and done well, even under oppressive conditions. And it is because of God's hand and God's protection and God's providence. And so Israelites has to remind themselves that we were foreigners in a foreign land. And that's why we have to take care of the foreigners among us today. And when we forget the story of where our ancestors have come from, we become disillusioned with the other who is in our neighborhood. And so understanding that our approach to dealing with those who have come from far country, it is for our benefit. We will understand this wider world, understand people from other languages and cultures and religion. And for us to understand that, what does it mean? The world who is in our backyard, in our front yard, in our neighborhood. And so who's our new neighbor? I don't get to decide that, who becomes my new neighbor. But I'm commanded to love the neighbor and to love the stranger among me. And so the stranger will become a friend. A stranger will expand my understanding of the world. A stranger will expand my view to understand where they're coming from, their faith, their values, their practices, their culture, all of that. And then what does it mean for me to relate, Christ who died for them as well, or relate to them, or maybe they're Christians, maybe from a different tradition. And what does it mean to have a greater appreciation of Christians from around the world? And so this is what we call as becoming a global Christian or a world Christian.
Yeah.
Sometimes our denominational identity, our local understanding of our local church with a few dozen people or a few hundred people or 1,000, depending on how big your church is. Sometimes these four walls of the church have defined our understanding of the church. But church is truly global now. And, and then this reality of global community, and when Christians from other parts of the world who are coming, because 2/3 of immigrants to America are Christians.
Wow.
And so it's important for us to understand these are Christians. Large share of them are coming from other parts of the world. And I need to know them because I'm going to be spending eternity with them. And understanding that, it's not just few years and few decades that we live on the face of the earth. We're going to be spending eternity with the people from all over the world. And so for us to have that understanding, otherwise heaven, you will have culture shock. You won't fit in there because there are people from everywhere. Get ready. because the eschatological vision of Revelation, it says the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. But he also talks about who's seated on the throne and a great multitude that no one can number from every tribe and tongue and language and people and country are going to be bowing down before the Lamb of God. And so that vision of, worshiping with God's people from around the world. And in a few years, especially here in America, we get to relate to other people from other parts of the world. And why knowing them is important for my discipleship.
Mm.
You don't become a global Christian by hanging around with your own people. And so we say world Christian, not worldly Christian, world Christian.
World
The idea
Christian.
that
Yeah.
you need to have brothers and sisters from other parts of the world. It is an essential part of your discipleship, your understanding and celebrating the mutuality and togetherness of the global community. And so if they are not from a Christian background, again, we have a responsibility towards them. And how
Absolutely.
can I meaningfully live as a Christ follower in front of them and work with them and shop with them, and where our kids are going to school, how can we make Jesus real to those folks? Because they are much more open to the gospel of Jesus here in this country than back in their homes. They don't have social pressures.
Yeah.
They don't have community pressures. They are easy to compare and contrast their faith with, the inherited faith. All of that happens in the displacement. So
Yeah.
that's why more number of people, migrants are turning to Christ. And because they're much more open, much more closer to the gospel in foreign lands than in their places of their birth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
And
why we say, if you're a Christian, you will travel. And if you travel, you will become a Christian.
yeah. And also, if you're a Christian, like you said, you're a world Christian by default, I feel, right? Like we get accepted into God's household, into his family the minute we are born again. So we become part of the global community of Christians. Thank you for explaining that again and encouraging us to see migrants among us or refugees through a biblical lens, through an eschatological lens, and also a theological lens. I hope that for someone listening or watching, that was like the push they needed, or they felt the conviction to be kind to foreigners and to not see them as a statistic, a threat, or a burden, but to go beyond all those and look at them through God's eyes, through a biblical lens.
Because all of migration, it is not of, we think of social, economic, political situations, which is forcing people to move. But from a scriptural perspective, Paul, in his sermon in Areopagus address in Acts chapter 17, he says, God determines the time and the place where we should live.
Yeah.
It is the sovereign work of God, and God is moving people. It is not that, I have chosen to come to America. God has moved people. In my case, it was very obvious. I was not pursuing. Somebody came hunting for me and hired me. That is very obvious. Someone else is behind me. But a lot of people pursue a study or find a job or get married or other situation. The push factors in migration studies, we call about push factors and the pull factors. And sometimes a better living condition or a marriage proposal from America or whatever is attracting people to move. Far beyond all that, if you step aside 50,000 or 100,000 feet perspective, the big picture would be God is moving people. He is moving people for his own purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, Acts 17 says God moves people because for the purpose so that they will come to know him.
Yeah.
And
And
so migration is the work of God, and God is behind this. We have to see God's, fingerprints in the movement of people.
yeah,
And then we will see the other who are culturally different, linguistically different, nationality is different, region is different. They will see everyone in a different light. They are part of the God's story. God is weaving together a story, and his mission and his activity is very present in the midst of movement of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal of this podcast, which I repeat every episode, I start by saying that the goal is to encourage biblical perspectives on migration and inspire faith in action. And so you are just like speaking my
Sure.
language, and it's so good to hear someone, really explain this in terms that we can understand. I wanted to shift the conversation now towards, your area of expertise, one of your areas of expertise and your area of research, which is the diaspora. And for those who don't know, maybe just like a definition of what a diaspora is. And then can you talk about the Indian diaspora a little bit? Maybe share some highlights from your research.
Sure. The word diaspora is a Greek word. It is first appeared in the Old Testament translation of the Bible. And when the Old Testament, which was written in Hebrew, when it was translated into Greek in Alexandria in Egypt, and the 70 scholars, they came together and took the God's holy word and translated the Bible, Old Testament, Hebrew Bible, into Greek, and that came to be known as Septuagint. So every migrant, alien, displacement themes, and they coined this Greek word called diaspora. Just simply a two compound word, and dia and spora. That's basically an agrarian word. In the olden days, a farmer will take a handful of seeds, go out into the ground and throw it. This dispersion, this scattering of the seeds, it came to be known as diaspora, scattering, thrown out. And so that began to be the people, especially the Jewish people, who were scattered and living away from their homeland. They came to be called as diaspora, the Jewish diaspora. They're ethnically Jew, but they're living away from their homeland. And so they were all over the Mediterranean world, and in Persia, and in Babylon, and Syria, and Asia Minor, and Greece, and Rome, and all the way to Spain, and then southern Africa, north of Africa, southern Mediterranean Sea. So this large dispersed community came to be known as the Jewish diaspora. Subsequently, the word was used to describe the Armenian diaspora, the Greek diaspora, and others who live in places other than they were born. And sometimes under constraint, forceful migration, but sometimes volitional and by choice. People are moving about for trade, for business opportunities, or out of famine, or political unrest and economic reasons. So this scattered community came to be called as diaspora. But today is widely applied to all kinds of people who are living away from their homeland. So when you talk about Chinese diaspora, Chinese around the world, Indian diaspora, Indians around the world,
Yeah.
and Filipino diaspora, Filipinos around the world. So kind of all nationalities who make their home in other countries or their descendants. Migrants are only one generation deep. So that particular individual, as an adult or as a child, goes from one place to another place and makes their home, or subsequently goes to a third place. And so all those are migrants. But their descendants who are born and raised in another country, but their parentage and their ancestry belong to somewhere else. So for those who live as a minority in a foreign land, and even in spite of their birth in that land, all of them is included in the diaspora. So diaspora is migrants plus their descendants in a foreign land. And so it's a much more multi-generational, multinational, and network of community relationship across boundaries of nationality, language, culture, and religion, and how they're tied together. So this collective reference to a group of people who are living in many nations across many generations. So this conceptual framework is often called the diaspora. So Indian diaspora, we broadly divide into two categories. One we call as a pre-1947 and post-1947. And before India became independent in 1947, the migration that took place, some by choice, but largely out of forcefully displacement because of the colonial masters who ruled India at that time. And largely British, but also French and the others who have taken Indians to different parts of the world. So French region to, the Danish and largely the British. British had a presence all over the world. And so they needed workers, and they took people from India as what we call as indentured laborers. So over 2 million people were displaced from 1830s to 1940s from India. And so that's the old diaspora. They have grown phenomenally over the years, over generation, in their places of settlement. And so it was largely agrarian at that time because the sugarcane plantation. And but then, coffee and rubber and other plantations, economy was manned by people from India. Let me just get.
Sure.
But after 1947, what we call as the post-1947 independent India, people were migrating to places for job, opportunities, studies, and other reasons. And so first was immediately was British because of the connections with the colonial, those who fought the World War II particularly. Many people from India and Nepal were drafted to fight the war, Second World War. They were able to go to the British territories and find settlement there. But subsequently, post-1947, people moved for trade, for work, for studies, and other reasons, and they got scattered. So every decade, 50s, and was largely British and British Commonwealth nation. And then 60s, mid-60s was the American wave. In 1965, there was an immigration reform that happened in America, and that brought in people, allowed people. Until then, there was a ban. What they call as Asian exclusion law was in effect.
Yeah.
And since 1880s, nobody from Asia was allowed to come to America. And so that law was repealed, and a new law set in 1965, the Naturalization and Immigration Reform Act of 1965, brought in, allowed people to come from India. So not that people did not come before that. Very few people came, and many of them returned back, including my mother-in-law. And she came in 1950s, late 50s, to study in America, and she went back subsequently. But early 60s, a lot of people, my uncle, and I know family members and all other people in the community, many of them from southern India for Christian studies or opportunities in science and tech and education and philosophy and economics and other fields. Many have come to study in the early 60s. But I think 65 is when floodgates opened. A large number of people started coming in. And from 60s and 70s and 80s, literally every decade we had doubled.
Yeah.
And now, 2025, we are talking about something like 5.2 million people of Indian descent in North America. Yeah,
that's a large part of the main immigrant population, which is around like 13 or 14 million. Or am I wrong?
Inclusive of all people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Asians are the Chinese are the largest of Asian, and Indians make up the second largest Asian American community now. And but it's largely Indians. In 2025, American Community Survey says that something like 5.2 million people of Indian descent are here. And
what percentage of those would you say are Christians?
about 20%. And over 1 million Christians are in America of Indian descent.
That's eye-opening. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did a study a few years ago. We surveyed the community, and we found something like over 1,500 churches in US and Canada. And together, the US alone probably constitutes around 18 to 19%, around 20% altogether of the population. So around 1/5 of Indian Americans are Christian.
And that's a big number considering that in India, we are a much smaller minority, like under 10% or maybe.
India is
Hello.
around 2.5% officially,
Oh,
and but unofficial figures maybe 5% to
okay.
6% of people in India are Christians. But in America, we're talking about nearly 20%. It's largely because of the Christian migration. Largely in the 60s is the nurses and doctors.
Okay.
And, that whole migration wave out of the 1945 in UK, out of the World War. And, in 60s, the nurses generation who came. And almost even now, some of the largest share of profession of nurses are among Christians from Kerala and Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh, and few in Gujarat. And so the Christians were open to the profession of health and nursing, and large number of women went into this profession,
Yeah.
especially where education was prevalent. They encouraged their girls to go and study and the fields like nursing after India became independent.
Yeah.
And of course, Christian mission hospitals, they were the one who started the nursing school. And so all through 50s and 60s, large number of nursing pools were generated, educated in Christian pockets in India.
Yeah.
And because Hindus and Sikhs and other communities did not encourage this profession made inroads among the Christians, especially in Kerala. So something like 90% of India's nurses comes from one state of Kerala.
From Kerala. Wow.
So that nurses generation and the medical doctors, they were all from the Christian belt. And so early migration in the 60s and 70s and early parts of 80s were largely Christians. And so they have the largest share to start with. And then subsequently, 80s was largely a higher education wave. And I think in the mid 80s, an Indian gentleman won a Nobel Prize in physics. And suddenly American universities said, oh, there are really good talent and smart kids in India and they need to recruit them. And so American embassies started recruiting from colleges in India. And so
Yeah.
80s, we see the wave of higher education. And then come 90s, the IT revolution
This is
just exploded
yeah,
in the
software
early
and tech.
90s. And then 2000, Y2K problem, Indians proved their mettle that they can turn around on at a cost effective and time sensitive manner, handle huge projects. And so they proved themselves on the IT wave. So last 25 years has been the IT wave that has been riding, and now probably the AI wave. And all of that is creating a lot more opportunities for Indians to come. But proportionately, Christian share has dwindled over the years. And, but still largely Christian share is disproportionately high as compared to Christians in India or elsewhere. Because by virtue of education, by virtue of work, fields like technology and engineering and sciences and healthcare and all of these fields, because Christians are a educated population in India.
Yeah. Yeah.
High level of education, because being Christian means go send your children to school, and they send them to good schools and they study and they work hard. And because literacy, literature, education, all of them came along with Christianity and the missions in India. And so we can never separate Christianity from this emphasis on education, because you had to read the Bible. You had to become literate. Bible was translated into Indian languages, and people started reading the Bible in their respective heart languages. And this explosion happened, educational inroads into communities. Because even 3-4 generations ago, percentage of literacy was very low.
Yeah.
Even in Kerala. And I often tell my own great grandfather, he's the first one who wrote his name. And then what did he do? He sent his children to school. What did he do? Send his children to high school.
Yeah.
What did he do? My father, who went and wanted to go to college.
And in a way, you echo what my mom also says, because she's, she can read the Bible in both English and Telugu. She can quote verses, both languages. And she always told me, if you want to learn a language, read the Bible in that language.
Yeah.
So that's interesting and so informative. And so I want to end these set of questions on diaspora by talking about the Indian Christians, especially in the US. And, what are your thoughts on how the mainstream American churches involve or engage with the Indian Christian diaspora? Um, like there is potential in involving them, in reaching out to other Indian communities. But do you think that kind of thinking has been developing in the American church, or is it taking time to kind of realize the importance of the diaspora communities?
Yeah, I think, the recent immigrant communities are kind of a new because most even American churches are not aware so many of the Indians are Christians because
Yeah.
over half of Indians are Hindus. And so the dominant view is all Indians are Hindus, or they see people wearing turbans. They think they're all turban clan, they are Punjabis and Sikhs. And so sometimes they don't understand that India is very diverse,
Hmm.
religiously diverse and linguistically and culturally very diverse nation. And they don't know so many Indians are Christians because even those who are Christians, they do their Christianity very differently.
Yeah.
Their language, their culture, and their community aspects. So there is a very marked difference. And so they're not able to associate with them or see any value that we can add or any area that they can collaborate. They do Telugu churches, Tamil churches, Malayali churches, Gujarati churches. So sometimes, kind of they don't know who they are. They don't know how to connect with us. And I think all of that has created unique challenges.
Hmm.
And but I think the hope lies in the second, third generation. And when they come of age, sometimes they don't know the language of their parents or the church that they've grown up in. And so they become assimilated into the mainstream culture. So they become the bridge into the larger American Christianity and the society. And so first generation churches will continue and flourish as migration continues, which is in near future, we'll continue to see the migration from India and Indian Americans becoming Christians and joining local churches or local American churches. And so we do see many people of, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh background also becoming Christians in North America, and they're joining some of the mainstream church. But sometimes they also don't know how to relate to Indian Christians because they haven't grown up in an Indian church, Indian community. They don't know how Indians do Christianity. And that looks a little weird. And that's not the way I've done church and community life. And so there's both ways. I think there is a disconnect. And so there is a hope, we need to find common grounds on which either Bible or mission or kind of theology or a burden to evangelize or share our faith with others. And so there's a great growing openness. Second is the reason of Indians are very visible now.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Indians are, kind of the elite of the elite in America, a high income, high educational status. They are politically and media and neighborhoods, and their wealth and their prominence is very evident now. And so more and more people are becoming aware of Indians because we have passed that critical mass of 5 million to become visible now. And they are prominent in some of the top tech companies, CEOs and financial sector, retail sector, and many educational institutions are all headed by some incredibly gifted, talented, experienced leaders from the Indian diaspora. And so as a result of that, everybody wants to reach Indians now. And I get so many American pastors telling us, hey, do you know Indians, Indian churches and whom they can partner with? And, we have lots of in my neighborhood, lots of Indians here. What can we do? And so all these conversations are leading to people wanting to kind of engage Indians. And so as a result, a few years ago, we put together a book about sharing Jesus with Hindus. It's about larger global Indian Hindu diaspora. And half of the book was written by people of Hindu background
Yeah.
and who are now become followers of Christ. And then others who are work with the larger Indian community. Because it's not just the Christians who are migrating, everybody is migrating. If you have education, if you have skill, if you have motivation, if you have connections, they're going places. and we will see more of them coming. But the other side of it is even the American churches need to recognize that they are also a diasporic church.
Yeah.
Christianity is not native to America. Christianity, Jesus did not grow up in, Chicago or take his disciples to Lake Michigan. Lake Galilee is somewhere else. Caesarea is somewhere else. And, Jerusalem where he died is somewhere else. It was brought here. Christianity was brought to this continent, and it was brought by immigrants. And all immigrants carry their faith with them to the new places. And so over decades and over the last 2.5 centuries, and its intermixing and interaction with other people from other parts of the world is what made American Christianity so dynamic and dominant force in the early, late 20th and early 21st century.
Yeah.
And so the diasporic origins of the Christian faith and their interface with others over a period of time, over a generation, is what revives and renews Christianity and gains this missionary impulse to go to other parts of the world through the linkages, connections, and language and cultural bonds that they have with people in other parts of the world. And so that's what makes American Christianity very unique, because it is home to Christians from literally all over the world.
Yeah.
In America, their home. And so this vitality and this diversity and this richness of Christian traditions and faith of the people from all over the world is present in our neighborhood. And so we need to leverage those connections and understand the diasporic nature and the impulse, the missionary impulse that it produces to re-engage with the world with the new kind of vigor and vitality and theology and missiology of the American church to engage the world.
I'd never thought of it that way before, how you explained the diversity and the immigrant background of the American church. So that was so informative. Thank you so much. And, our entire conversation has been so eye-opening and enlightening. And I hope that, those who are listening and watching will also appreciate how much time you've spent sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. I'm so honored that you agreed to be a guest on our podcast. But before I let you go, I have one last question about your recent works. Would you like to share anything about your recent books? I know, Sam, you've written so many books. I myself bought one of them, which is Asians in Diaspora and Diasporas in Asia. This is one you co-edited. And I've been enjoying reading this book so much. I know you have so many books out there and you're a prolific writer. So tell us about your most recent work.
Well, being a teacher and ask my students to write papers, I feel that I need to write and model, habit of writing on a regular basis before my students. And, one after another, I just work at one book at a time. Before you know, I have some 20 titles. I have a 20th title coming out this month. And but I would say in the context of Indian, I think this book would be helpful. It's called Desi Diaspora, and it's about Indian diaspora around the world. Indians are called Desis abroad. And so it's a story of a collection of stories of what Indians are doing in different parts of the world, all from ministry, missions, pastors, scholars of the Indian community. Then I would say I have a new book coming out this month, which is South Asians on the Move. It's a story of various Indian communities, including India, Pakistan, Tibet, also Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, so the wider South Asian continent, and all of those people who are made their homes all over the world. And so they're capturing the story of the community and also ministry among Bangladeshis or, Sri Lankans and others. And it's called South Asians on the Move, Global Witness of the Dispersed Christians. It is expected to come out this month, April 2026. And also I have a new book coming out in May called Mission on the Move, which is a little more academic and scholarly, and it's about missiology and theology and Bible. And Mission on the Move is published by Wheaton, a leading academic American publisher. And so Mission on the Move, how missions is changing in the early 21st century on a global scale. But just look out on Amazon, look out at the public. A lot of them are scholarly and historic and academic materials, but it'll give you understanding. There's a growing field, lots of research, lots of publication. I just awarded a new PhD degree just yesterday. And
Congratulations.
young scholar, just done a phenomenal work in writing about hybridity. And so lots of scholarship, lots of research, lots of writing is happening. It's a growing field. And if you're interested in research, you should look at diaspora, migration, and the field of world Christianity. And it'll be worthwhile to understand our local church, our ministry across nations, our ancestral homeland, or our adopted nations, or the desperate, forcefully displaced people, or through the lens of Bible and the history of the church, through the lens of migration, will greatly enrich your understanding who you are, how your ministry context, and the history of the church and the mission of the church through the lens of migration and diaspora. Thank you again for having me, and enjoyed our conversation, and blessings on you and your listeners. And feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or thoughts, and or any help needed in the context of church and ministry or missions. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure having you. And just wanted to say thank you also for the work that you're doing, just this immense body of work that you've already produced, and you continue to do that on this topic. And it is beneficial not only to Indian Christians, but just to global Christianity as a whole. So I just wanted to thank you and praise God for using you in that way to spread the gospel and to also educate the other Christians, and training theologians and young excuse me, training theologians and young scholars. So thank you so much.